Good evening, all of you, and welcome to the KPIT Technologies investor call. As Sunil mentioned in his opening remarks, what I would like to do is to offer some opening comments before we throw the session open for questions and answers. I would like to divide my comments into broadly three parts. A, how has this last quarter been and this last year been? B, we will talk about the industry because there have been a lot of questions about how do we look into the future. And C, I would like to talk about the next year or maybe a year thoughts about how things are. So I trust you have got our investor update, and what we have been trying to do every quarter is to increase the depth and coverage of the information that we provide. And so I may not need to go much detail into the last quarter or the last year, but let me just share some highlights with you. So on the back of a very good Q3, we also had a good Q4. In our dollar terms, the revenues went up by 6.8% quarter on quarter. The net profits went up by almost 12%. EBITDA percentage jumped from 15.7 to 17.2, a very healthy jump indeed. The DSOs came down to 54 days. And as a result of the profitability and good collection, the cash balance that we had on our books went up from 630 crores to 822 crores. And remember, we don't have any debt anymore. And the balance sheet is very healthy. Almost 70% of our assets are in cash. So that is how the last quarter was, and very creditable, I think, indeed. If you were to look at the year, as you would remember, the first two quarters were bad for the industry and bad for us. And on an overall year basis, our revenues came down by about 5%, or EBITDA by about 5%, and PAT by about 4%. But if one were to compare last year's Q4 and this year's Q4, which I would say are both kind of normal quarters, we can see a very good change. Our revenues, although in financial terms there was a small drop of 3%, the volume was the same, which clearly showed that now the customers are certainly preferring on-site offshore work to on-site work. And so our revenues, although they have dropped, the volume has remained the same. Our EBITDA has gone up by 24% and PAT by 26%. Our EBITDA margin has gone up from 13.5 to 17.2%. Cash, you would recollect a couple of years ago, we hardly had any cash with us. And our cash has been going up. In this last 4 quarters, the cash balance has gone from 327 crores to 822 crores, almost 500 crores of accretion during this period, driven by the profits as well as good collections. So this has been the year as a whole, and I hope you will be happy with the year. Our own team is also quite happy with the year. The question, however, I'm sure is in your mind, whether this is indicative of the years to come, whether our performance will continue in the years to come, and how do we look at our company in the context of the industry that we are serving. As you would all recollect, some 3 years ago, we announced that we will not be a general purpose IT company, that we will be a company focused only on the mobility industry, which means we will focus essentially on the automotive, both passenger cars and CVs. And so in a sense, our future is now tied to the future of the automotive industry. And there have been questions because earlier in the last 12 months, the industry took some hit because of COVID globally. And there have also been now talks on the impact of the chip shortage on the automotive industry. And so there are naturally some questions in the minds of some people as to how things are likely to pan out. Although, as you know, the auto industry took some hit 4 quarters ago. In the last quarter or so, in the recent months, things are coming back. The pent-up demand has started coming back. and so it seems that it will gain its normalcy shortly. What is important is not just the number of cars that are being sold, but also the nature of the cars. And that is something that I want to spend a little bit time on. Over the period, the role of electronics and the role of software inside a car is becoming increasingly critical and very crucial. Some people have called a car as a computer on wheels. High-end cars have anywhere between 110 to 113 ECUs or computers on them. And in all of them, there are literally millions of lines of code. More lines of code in a car now than in an airplane. And this is the current status, but going forward, it is very clear that the role of electronics and of software is increasing even more. And this is driven by 4 factors which we call as CASE, connected, autonomous, shared, and electrical. And let me spend a few seconds on each one of them. Connectivity is becoming increasingly important. A car is not an island by itself. It is connected with other cars. It is connected with the ground, and it is connected with the owner or the driver who is driving it. And that connectivity is extremely critical going forward, especially as the people are now looking at self-driving or autonomous cars. So there is a lot of work happening in the area of connectivity, and our company is quite deeply engaged in that. The second major trend is the area of autonomous. And as more and more vehicles are becoming shared, the desire to cut the driver cost, in the Western world, this desire is very high, which means that more and more companies are going in for self-driving vehicles. I wouldn't say it is really like immediately around the corner, but the direction towards that is unmistakable. Autonomous driving, of course, involves a huge amount of software, because typically what you have is multiple sensors and cameras which collect the pictures around the car. Then there has to be a software which interprets those pictures and converts them into recognizable objects. There is a lot of AI involved in this, and then you use that to connect with the behavior of the car. So again, a huge potential where millions of miles of data is being connected, so that the AI models become more and more dependable. The third one is shared mobility, and I spoke about it a little earlier. Even shared mobility is all driven by software. And whereas people are now saying that in the Western world, the personal ownership of the car is going down and shared ownership is going up. What it really means that an earlier car, which was being driven by maybe 20,000 kilometers a year, will now be replaced by shared cars, which will be driven by a few hundred thousand kilometers every year, because they will run continuously. And you will have more and more models coming in a shorter and shorter time frame, which means that every new car model which will replace the old car will have to be richer in its features, which again means higher electronics in them. And the last one is, of course, electric. You would have probably read GM has made a commitment to go fully electric by the end of the decade. Most of the other car companies have made such similar commitments. Volkswagen, Daimler, BMW are also saying that most of their new entries in the market will be electrical. And this means, again, a lot of use of electronics and software. Because, the batteries have to be managed properly, the engine ECU has to be managed properly, the DC-DC converters have to be managed properly, and all of that is driven, as I said, by software. So the way we see that there will be growing use of software inside a car. A company like McKinsey, for example, has said that over the next decade, the growth of software inside the car is going to be almost like 10-12% every year. This is the sphere in which we are playing. And so we work, as I said earlier, not as a general IT company. We are a pure technology company focused on the mobility industry in the mid, and our engineering, almost 90% is focused towards electronics. So we are in the thick of these major changes that are happening. Our own vision of ourselves is that we want to be reimagining mobility along with our customers. We want to be at the guiding or the leading area of this, and we want to operate as software integrators of choice for our partners. And we believe in the light of this, there should be enough work for us to do in a very, very exciting area. Keeping this in mind, we have actually taken 4 missions, or you could call them as 4 initiatives. And I want to spend a minute each to tell you what we are doing so that you can appreciate the nature of the work that we are doing. So we believe that the work that we do is extremely critical from our customers' perspective, because the software we write goes inside a car which is sold by our customer to his end customers, with which he is giving warranties and guarantees, and he is expecting his customer satisfaction to be very high. So he is looking at high quality software, sturdy, dependable, highly efficient software. And what we want to do is to make our customers successful. And with that in mind, we are looking at actually 4 major missions for us to carry out. First is to come up with leading edge platforms and practices. We want to become the best in the area in which we are. And with this in mind, we are now focused on a few practices such as connected vehicles, autonomous vehicles, powertrain, AutoStar, which is like connectivity software, autonomous driving, connectivity, and such other areas we are working on. And in each of these areas, what we are trying to do is to build a lot of tools, platforms, accelerators, which can help us deliver better software, faster, cheaper to our customers so that they can succeed in their marketplace. In this area, we make significant investments. And so these are the areas where we believe we should get some edge over our competition. The second initiative that we have, or mission that we have, is zero defect delivery. As I mentioned, the software that we deliver is mission critical, and we want to ensure that our customers should be able to sleep easy at night once they use our software. So a lot of efforts have been going on inside the company on zero defect delivery, and on that we have done, I would think, fairly well. There is still a way to go, but I think we have progressed quite well in this area. The third mission we have is the best place to grow. And this is the work in which we are engaged is something that is driven by passion. It's driven by passion for a cleaner, smarter, safer mobility. And we want to attract people who are passionate about this area. We want to attract people who are technology savvy and who want to make mobility much better. So our focus has been to attract the best, to retain them, to train them, and to grow them professionally and personally, as along with the company that we expect to see growing. We do many initiatives in this area. Some of you would be probably aware of the work that we do in KPIT Sparkle, which is where we attract innovative minds across the country. Last year, we had over 21,000 students from like 600 colleges across the country, from almost like 24 states who participated in this. And they were the candidates, who are looking forward to working in an exciting environment. And we propose and we work towards providing that environment. And that's a very major initiative, which is personally guided by our CEO. We hope that we will attract and retain the best of the talent, so that our customers gain and we gain. The last of the 4 missions is, of course, what we call as T25, the top 25 customers, clients that we are looking at. We don't want to be providing services to each and every client that can be around. We want to stay focused on a few clients, and we want to deliver them the highest value. We believe that there are a lot of benefits of long-term association. We believe that we would end up not being vendors to our clients, but being long-term partners. So, and we can discuss with our clients their long-term plans and their growth plans. And we have seen a lot of depth emerging out of our strategy of T25. We are also beginning to find that the top customers that we are working with are truly global in nature. So you can, typically the same companies operate across, Asia, Americas, and Europe. And our work with them in one area, in one region, helps us in another area, in another region. So these are the 4 missions that we are following very closely, and we trust that all of them together will result in profitable growth for us. And we believe that at least in the last couple of years, we are beginning to see sprouts of this initiative. Now, looking at what we are planning to do as a strategy, which you can call as inch wide and mile deep, we believe that we will become an integral part of the automotive ecosystem. We believe that we will enjoy the fruits of the growth of this industry in their engineering area, which, as I mentioned, is really expected to be very good. And therefore, we believe that it is possible to have some kind of a secular growth in times to come. We are banking on this, and I should say we are preparing for this. Now, we want to continue to focus on the mobility industry, but what it means is that we will work also in the cognate or related industry, which constitutes, so to say, the entire ecosystem of the automotive industry. So we are seeing ourselves now engaged with the semicon companies insofar as they are working with the auto companies. We also see with the onslaught of 6G and 5G, there will be a lot of connect between telecom and automotive industry, and we see that we will probably play a role in both these areas. Currently, we are focused largely on the passenger car business, but we are also seeing a significant growth potential in the commercial vehicle business. Because some of the technologies that I mentioned to you about from CASE perspective, they are extremely relevant from the CV business perspective. Typically, a CV owner is focused on his profitability, so he appreciates everything that can add value to his bottom line, and we are striving to become that partner who will do that. So these are like my broad comments about the growth in the years to come, and I would like to say that we are very sanguine, we are very hopeful about how things can pan out over the years. I would like to take a moment to talk about a very momentous decision that we took 3 years ago. You would recollect at that time we were a software company. We were about $500 million, and then we decided that we want to let go of our general software business and really focus on a single vertical. At that point in time, some of us thought whether this would be too risky, whether hitching our stars, whether hitching our wagon to a single industry could be dangerous. But I believe that things have panned out well. Looking at it from our investors' perspective, and this is something that has been dwelt at length in our investor update. Our shareholders, now that they own a share each of KPIT as well as Birlasoft, they have gained about 54% CAGR since the day on which we announced the merger and demerger scheme, and since the day in which it was implemented, that is 2 years ago, their CAGR of total value has been about 40%. So I believe that from the perspective of our investors, it has been a good decision. From our own perspective, we believe that our focus is more clear, our depth is greater, and the value to our customers is also higher. So we believe that this has come out quite well. Now the last issue that I want to talk about is next year. As our investor update says that we expect decent growth in the next year. I would put it in mid-teens, barring unforeseen or exceptional circumstances. We expect the EBITDA also to be in the same range where we are. It's currently 16-17%. We believe that our cash acquisition will continue, and our focus will be to maintain a strong balance sheet. So I think these are my opening remarks. We shall be happy to take any questions that you may have for all of us. And thank you again for attending this call.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Karan Uppal from PhillipCapital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Congratulations, sir, on a very good set of numbers. The first question is on the deal wins. So, can you please talk about, how the deal wins were in Q4 and how is the pipeline looking overall, for next couple of quarters? And I appreciate, if you will talk about in terms of the practices, whether you are seeing, demand in autonomous, connected electric. So that would be my first question. And secondly, on the powertrain business, this quarter it was flat. So any specific reason for that? Thanks.
So, two things I would like to say. On the pipeline, we do not give a specific number, but let me tell you that our wins pipeline increase during this year has been one of the highest in the last few quarters. And the pipeline gives us confidence about what we have given, what we talk about the next year. So I think there is enough pipeline sufficiency to move on to the next year. So that is the point number one. And it is across the region and it is across the practices. So we see actually some of the practices in the past where, couple of them were I would say we're not growing, and we had mentioned to you at that point of time that this will come back, and we are very happy that this growth is across the region and across the practices. On the equity point of view, I think there is no point in looking at every quarter. I mean, if you look at equity has driven our growth last few quarters. The large deal wins were there. I mean, it happens every quarter here and there. I think nothing specific. Actually, as we have always said, that will be a major area of growth for us. Specifically, I mean, apart from Europe, which was always, which has a tremendous focus on electrification, now US has also, US companies and overall US as a region has also got a very high focus on electrification. So actually, that's a high growth area for us over the midterm.
Okay. And sir, on powertrain business?
So that's what electric powertrain is what I explained to you. So naturally, the conventional powertrain business will get more and more. I mean, it is not something which will grow to the extent like electric powertrain. And our practice also in electric powertrain is higher. Actually, as all the growth is coming largely into electric powertrain, and we have been in a position to sustain and grow marginally also in the powertrain.
Okay. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question is from the line of Vimal Goyal from Union Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. I think my question on revenue growth has been answered regarding the guidance. And my question now is on margin and offshoring. What I believe is that there has been some increase in offshoring, which has led to some increase in the gross margins. Just wanted to understand what has been the extent of increase in offshoring, and is it sustainable going forward? I mean, will we see an increasing trend of offshoring going forward? If yes, then is there an upside risk to your 17% EBITDA margin guide?
So let me say two things specifically. I think we have given a guidance between 16 and 17%, while our Q4 is 17.2% for a couple of reasons. One is naturally this year we see increments which will come up, and we have to really spend that. The second part is also we are looking at and specifically looking at the market and the attritions we have to provide for some of this on a higher side. The third part specifically is in terms of labor code which may get into effect sometime during the year. We also see that at least in the H2, we actually hope that there will be partial operations which will start, which will also increase the expenses, operating expenses. And last but not the least, Mr. Pandit talked about T25 and our deeper engagement. We would like to invest in that area, and we are taking some more concrete strategic steps in order to improve our engagement. So these are the areas of spend. At the same time, we are going to increase offshoring during this year. Certainly, that is area is there, and we are looking at improving margin across the practices and the region. The second area which we see is on the productivity side. As you see that trend for the last 3 quarters and going forward, our fixed price engagements have gone up. And with the productivity improvements, significant productivity improvements initiatives we have, we hope that is going to help us to improve the contribution. And because of these 2 reasons, I think we have guided between 16 and 17% for the next year. So I would leave it at this point.
Right. The second question was with reference to your media comment that you made in the morning, saying that the automotive spend on ER&D is expected to grow between 10 to 12%. Safe to say, sir, that KPIT with its engagements with the top 5 clients will probably gain more share within their spend and will grow at a higher pace than that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we will be beneficiary of that. And as we have said that we are looking at, barring any unforeseen circumstances, mid-teen kind of a growth for the next year. If you look at our current run rate, we are around 10%. And we believe that, as I said, looking at the external factors, we should be in a position to really get to this kind of a growth rate of mid-teens. And we will be, and to your point, we will be the beneficiary of the spend into our key strategic clients.
Absolutely, sir. Point taken. Thank you so much, sir, and all the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rajesh Kothari from Alpha Accurate Advisor. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. I have 2 questions. One is industry specific. Is it possible for you to give a little bit more insights in terms of the competitiveness of KPIT, kind of players with whom we compete? Is it more like the captive houses of these auto companies, or are there global companies including, maybe some South Asian nations? That is first question. And then I will take the second question.
So, actually, if you look at the competitive landscape, it really varies for every area. I mean, every practice, every area, it changes. And I think we always have said that I would not look at it as a competition with the captives, but let me put it like this. We share the engineering spends with captive more. And we collaborate with the client, and we look at their strategy, what they want to do on their own, and what where we are in a position to add value. So from that perspective, we see that there are clear areas where KPIT plays a very significant role, specifically into productionization of the software. When the software goes into production, it's a pretty, I would say, it's a complex process, and also something you have to do for a longer time point of time. So I think that is one area. The second area, I would say, if we look at the external competition, naturally there are multifaceted and again across the practices. In some cases there are specialist companies in a few specific domains. Like I see, I'm just naming few, like Luxoft kind of a company which is more into
which company?
Luxoft, kind of a company which is more into domain of infotainment or e-cockpit area, or so there are companies like that. If you really look at some companies which and what the OEMs are trying to do is when they are going into the next level of architecture and production, they are also trying to own more software. So sometimes they are trying to own the software which till now was being supplied, but tier one. So I think that is where we have won couple of deals in the past. So that's one area where we are trying to own the software and work with OEMs and take the responsibility of software from tier one. And the third is we are working with the tier one to really transform them as OEMs are changing and they are expecting more from the tier ones, including the software. So we are working with tier ones for again from integration perspective and bringing up their software capabilities.
Okay. My second question is, if I look at, your numbers, well, of course, the QOQ numbers are definitely good, but I'm looking on the full year basis and as well as on fourth quarter on YOY basis, where the most segments basically, we have seen the very big degrowth. So just trying to understand, how one should look, because of course you have one segment which is growing and one segment which is degrowing, but net, if I, look at the thing, then FY21 over FY20, whether US or Europe or Asia, across verticals, across geographies, there is a degrowth. So, including new mobility as well. Of course, it is a very small base. So, just trying to understand that how one should, look at this.
So I think we have mentioned that if you really look at the Q4 part, Mr. Pandit also mentioned about it. I think the EBITDA, if you have seen, it has moved from 75 crore to 93 crore. And I think there has been a big shift into on-site to offshore in many areas. Specifically, I will take one example and which we have mentioned in the past. Like one significant assignment in autonomous last year we had taken, which was like 100% we were doing for 18 months from on-site, has moved significantly, like 70% offshore. So some of these things have happened, and many of these programs which were one of its kind, we had to be very, if I have to say, cautious about it in the beginning. And that transformation has happened during the year. I think so that is the reason it gets reflected into also EBITDA increase. And as I mentioned to you, going forward, and as Mr. Pandit mentioned, over next 4-5 years, we see a significant opportunity across the practices for our T25 clients.
So basically, you are saying if one adjusts for such on-site to offshore, either way, then it would have been a much bigger number in terms of the top line?
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a higher number for sure. We would not. It won't be a degrowth number.
And last question on my side. For taking this kind of a company where you have multiple clients, multiple segments, and I don't think you disclose TCV. How basically, from the visibility perspective, how one should, track the company?
I think the way we look at it is, I think it is about our focus, right? I think we are looking at, if you look at it over the period also, our model is very close to our T25 clients. So our 85% of the business is a repeat business with our clients. And as I mentioned, the spend is increasing. We are getting a higher share of that business. If you have seen over the period, our deal sizes have increased. And we can announce few, we cannot announce few. In some cases, we are lucky when the client allows us to, allow us to announce some of these deals. But based on the repeat case of customer, their increase in the share and our positioning, that on that basis we are giving, our estimate for the next year. And as I mentioned, even if you look at the last this quarter's run rate, it comes to about 10%, closer to 10%.
So basically, you are saying that the T25 clients, which are most important clients for you, their spend is going to be, say, 8-10% higher, on annualized basis. That's what you are.
10 to 12% higher.
Okay, and your share, whatever your share might be, that also you would likely to increase further.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. I'll come back in queue. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Mohit Jain from Anand Rathi. Please go ahead.
Sir, one is on your geographical split. So this time I think US shot up quite sharply versus Europe had just become our largest region, I think, last quarter or last to last quarter. So is there a change in the spend that you're looking at between these two regions?
No, I think we actually think that, if you really look at our Asia has shown the highest growth in terms of percentage. So I think we would be one of the very few companies which has such a balanced portfolio. US and Europe both are big markets, right? Things can change quarter to quarter, but overall, as I said, our estimate for the next year, our profitability for the next year, and growth across the practices, and all the three parameters we are seeing the growth. So there is nothing which probably is specific to a particular region.
So no specific win ramp up or anything that you would have seen in the US?
It will vary to some extent, right, here and there. But there's no trend. There is no secular trend.
The other comment that I made Mohit earlier was that, I think it's not proper to call a win in a particular geography because, an Asian client may be operating in Europe and US and we get some business from Asia to be executed, say, in Europe. So, the whole geographical division is so fungible.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't draw a lot from that.
Absolutely. That's right.
Okay. And the second was on the M&A, like you mentioned in the presentation, you guys are now looking for tuck-in. So any size that you can specify or areas where you see gaps? Could it be regional or more tech-driven or what kind of areas?
So we are not. Absolutely, we are not looking anything large, very large. I guess more around 20 million plus minus, right? So more driven by technology or some of the gaps in the strategy to accelerate that largely instead of building what we can accelerate. So some of the areas which we have said in the past, like the semiconductor, as Mr. Pandit mentioned, or some of those areas, and there are a few other areas which we are looking at.
So semicon meaning semicon chip design kind of area, or
no. Software, which basically what the big changes which is happening is software. We are already engaged with the semiconductor company. Semiconductor companies are playing a very significant part of the new architecture program, which Mr. Pandit mentioned about ECUs and controllers and etc. So they are also taking a higher responsibility. As we see our role as a software integration partner, the understanding of chip design and integration first help them with certain kind of a software, which we call middleware, as well as integration. For both these cases, the relationship with semiconductor will be very useful. So we are not looking at semiconductor companies more as a client, but more as a go-to-market partner to the OEMs, and basically understand use the expertise of semiconductor and the solution to service our OEMs better.
So the 20 million is the revenue size, or is it the enterprise value that you're looking at?
Typically, 20 million is the revenue size, what I mentioned.
Okay. Thank you, sir. That's all from me.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Andre Purushottam from Cogito Advisors. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my question. I have two questions. One is that from a medium-term perspective, could you give some color to the amount of opportunity that you see in the CV and the two-wheeler space? That was my first question. And the second question is that, you have two large deals in the recent past, on the 50-60 million euro kind of variety, which is a departure from the past from where the deal size has been fairly smaller. How do you see this trend coming out? Do you see a continuance of this trend? And I know that, you cannot predict this on a quarter-by-quarter basis, but from sense that you get on the ground, do you see the possibility of such multi-million dollar or euro deals increase in the future?
Yeah. So I will take the second question first. I think we see this trend for certainly larger engagement because as their challenges are significant in front of them. I think it is important they are looking more for as a partners rather than vendors. So in that case, they want higher ownership of their partners in a specific area, and it is across the domains. And as the architecture will become more significant, more complex, it will be across the domain and over many years. So from that perspective, these deal sizes are going up, and sometimes people don't sign specifically the POs, but it is very hard once you are in a production program, which is runs over 3 years to 4 years. So that is how we see. So that trend is absolutely there. Did I answer your question? And the second question?
Yeah. Yes. And is this also related to the fact that what you mentioned earlier, that the OEMs are going towards the tendency of wanting to own their software, and therefore that also increases the size of the deal?
Yes, absolutely. Because as I mentioned, for example, one of the deals which we won in the one of the three deals which we announced, which we won, was basically taking the ownership of the software on behalf of Tier 1 completely by KPIT for OEM, so that OEM has a better control over that. So I think those kind of deals, where of course the ownership and overall responsibility is high, and that's the reason the deal sizes are. Okay. And on the second two-wheeler and three-wheeler, we do have some solutions, but our basic focus on those is on T25 is our strategy for growth. We see the spend from T25 pretty significant. The opportunity is very high. So we would like to focus on these clients. And wherever there are certain platforms or products where we find maybe applicable for this, and we do have one or two, there we will find partners who can take to this two-wheeler or three-wheeler.
CV also.
CV is absolutely the focus for us. T25 basically talks about passenger car and commercial car. In the last 2 years, we have brought in more focus on the, we have increased our focus on commercial vehicles, which was earlier there, but we did not have a specific organization to really bring the focus, bring revenues from that. So I think over the last year and so, you will see that our commercial division, business from our commercial vehicle manufacturers is going up.
And can you give some color as to what are the areas in which your business is going in commercial vehicles? You also talked about the fact that the commercial vehicles is concerned about the total cost of operations, so perhaps your software may address those issues or some other issues. Can you give us what are the needs of commercial vehicles that you are trying to serve, and which are the needs that are emerging that that you are going to cater to?
Certainly. So it is exactly the same areas, but there is may I say that the technology adoption may be little differently done, but it is the same electrification. People are going for electrification. Now, in some cases, it may be hybrid. In some cases, it may be fuel cell. It may be, so there are multiple options, and commercial vehicles manufacturers may choose different options over past cars, but is the overall at an area level, it is the same as electrification. On autonomous, that is where, if you really look at any shared services, or if you really look at many of these areas where transportation of goods, if you can look at it, that's where also specifically in the cities, last miles and etc., there are where there are applications for autonomous more significant. In other areas also, if you look at e-cockpit, which also includes some areas of autonomous, there are certain regulations also which are coming where you need better connectivity as well as better features in the driver's cabin. So I think those are the areas which are driving this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That completely answers my question.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nitin P. from Investec. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hello sir. Good evening, everyone. Just a couple of questions. First is over the last, I think 3 to 6 months, a lot of OEMs have sort of, put sort of deadlines in terms of by when they want a complete EV portfolio. Is there any change in the urgency to close deals or anything that you see from these customers? And how do you see the sort of intensity of deal making over the next maybe 12 odd months with reference to these clients versus the others who still haven't sort of put in deadlines?
Yeah. So certainly there is a urgency as we talked about the adoption of electrification happening across the region. Earlier it was more in Europe, now moving to US. Autonomous also for some time it has been slowed down, but now it is ADAS. If you look at till level 3 automation, it is again there. So I think in all these areas actually there is a urgency because people have lost almost a year before. And if you look at what they are competing with, they are competing with Tesla and they are competing with new generation tech companies which have come with a full force. So there is of course an urgency, and I think most of the key decisions of many of these programs along with the new architecture will happen in these 24 months.
Sure. And on the T25 clients, we currently have 21. And by just your thoughts on by when you think the strategic clients that you have always looked to sort of capture should be within our base. And the second question was, interestingly, and it's nice to see that the revenue from strategic clients are now at pre-COVID levels. But what we're also seeing is that a lot of mobile phone OEMs have started launching electric vehicles. So in that context, is there any change in how would you think about this T25 clients that you have earlier looked at, and is there would these clients be potential areas where you look at in addition?
Certainly. So we have the way I would answer is we have currently 21 designated as a client, and when we say designated as a strategic client, it means there is a certain set of organization and investment we make to engage, the level at which we do, etc. But of course, we have a list of potential clients who will move into this strategic client, and there are another set of clients which at a right time when we think our relationship at a right level and we get a visibility, we move into the strategic client. Now, in these areas, there are what we call it as a new technology companies, disruptors, as you may say, or those. As you said, there are a few companies coming, but we are very conscious about working with some of these and making sure that they are in a right position to really, if I have to say, be successful, both in terms of their strategy and overall thing. So we track them, we engage with them, and some of them we have seen reasonable success, both from Chinese and other clients as well, Asian clients as well. Also some from the California Silicon Valley clients also. And what we expect is some of these will move into T25. And we look at the T25 client list every 6 months, and we basically look at it, and if there are any changes, we incorporate it.
Sir, two more quick questions from my side. One is a lot of there seems to be a lot of electric vehicle sort of launches out of China. So is it easy to sort of work with these customers, and do you see any of these customers sort of even coming within your strategic 25 or being meaningful for you? How easy is it to sort of penetrate those accounts? And the second one was like a bookkeeping question. I think when we relisted as KPIT Tech, we had spoken about how 60% of the powertrain revenue was EVs. How has that number changed when you look at it now? Thank you.
Yeah. So I will answer the first question. As I mentioned to you, we are engaged with these clients, and we have seen good engagement with some of them. So it is possible that some of them will, and it is. I mean, as they become more successful, and as our, there is a clear reason when we bring a person into T25. One is we are well engaged, and I think in China our presence has been there for quite some time. I think almost 10 years kind of a thing. And we did not go anywhere here and there, but we were focused on going to OEMs and specific plants. And see, as you know, there are more than 100 OEMs in China. And we probably would have visited 60-70% of them at some point of time. But after that, we have shortlisted clients with whom we can work with, and we have been focused on it over the period consistently without any, if I have to say, losing that focus. So we believe at some point of time when the time is right, and we see some early signs in engagement, so we are engaging with them, and we have reasonable presence for us to leverage that. So I think from that perspective, I feel comfortable with that. The second thing, you may know that when the China sales went up significantly of the automotive, most of that was European companies who have a presence in China. Their brand sales or foreign brands, even some of course, US also some, but largely German, their sales went up. So naturally, we are engaged with them in China also. But to your question, we are working with the new generation companies in China, Asia, and otherwise. And some of them may enter into T25. On the second side, I think that ratio, I won't have it exactly quickly, but I can tell you that it would have increased reasonably because our EPT growth has been higher and conventional powertrain growth would be marginally higher. So I think the ratio would have changed. I don't have exact number, but it would be more like 70-30. Correct.
Great, sir. That's very helpful. Thank you so much and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Dipesh Mehta from Emkay Global. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I have a couple of questions. First is about, can you say now what would be our on-site offshore mix? I think earlier, maybe year and a half back, we used to have 55-45 kind of mix. So now how it has evolved. Second thing is on supply side related challenges. So can you help us understand what is our hiring plan, fresher versus lateral, and how we intend to manage our talent pool, considering we are looking somewhere around mid-teen kind of growth rate?
Yeah.
And third thing is about autonomous program. I think partly you alluded in earlier question, but if you can briefly touch upon autonomous program, any acceleration or deceleration, because earlier we have seen some softness in L4, L5. Whether that L4, L5 related spend also returning, or it is L2, L3 which is giving good traction and likely to nullify softness in L4, L4 kind of program. Thanks.
So first is, you know that we always say we will not, it's very hard for us to give on-site offshore ratio, and we will not give for two reasons. One is many of them are a fixed price engagement, and if you see even in the last year, there is a significant change in the contribution because of on-site offshore. It is not, it's very hard to track it, so we don't give it. The second is in some cases, not many, but in some cases, our pricing mechanism is also based on output. So that is another reason why we do not give it. So, but overall, I can tell you that from the this side, there will be at least 5%, if not more, shift in favor of offshore in the last year, and we hope that continues. That is point number one. The point number two was on autonomous. If you really look at, I have answered that question. I think we don't see any softness. We see a more adoption of level 3 vehicles, and I said it in India also. You will see more of some of those vehicles till level 3 coming in next few years.
Supply side.
The supply side. The supply side. I think last year we had a low attrition. Year before also we had one of the lowest attrition in the industry. And we will have a higher attrition in first H1 and it will stabilize by H2. That's what we think. But from your question specifically, we have given our offers to about 600 plus people from campus, and we are also now moving towards quarterly hiring model parallelly along with the campus model, which will allow us more flexibility as well as I would say just-in-time mechanism also for supply chain. So because otherwise, it becomes difficult so that we can also adjust the ratio between lateral and freshers. So looking at the environment, we can adjust to that ratio. So that's where we are. We feel reasonably confident about H1 where we have tied up our ends.
So just last related question is about pyramid. Whether you think employee pyramid can be good margin lever, or you think considering required skill, employee pyramid is limited kind of scope to leverage kind of from margin perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly not as it is not as leverageable as it is in a normal pure IT maintenance kind of a program. It is not exactly like that. But certainly what we are trying to do is our focus on creating assets, training, as well as tools is high. So by which it is certainly a lever. As I mentioned, I think in the next year we will see some benefit out of this, because last year we did not have freshers, and certainly it's a lever for sure.
Understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rajesh Kothari from Alpha Accurate Advisor. Please go ahead.
Thanks for giving me an opportunity. So basically, these new programs in which, we are dealing with our top, customers, top 20 customers. These are basically for their model launch primarily for Indian or Asian market, or it is for the global?
Global market, of course. They are all global. I mean, naturally, Asian manufacturers would have Asian, but European, American, and these are all global launches for most of the OEMs, as we talked about in the past.
Okay. See, why I ask this question is because if I look at, say, European market, there the EV sales are already, buzzing. One of the highest sales probably, is happening in EV compared to US market. So there it means so many programs have already done and so much spend is already done, correct? So, I'm just trying to understand that what is, somebody's already worked on it. So whether we have done a good part of that work, in terms of the opportunity, because these programs, let's assume it is for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. In that case, the revenue growth cannot be 15, 17% because it's the best of the times. In that case, the revenue growth needs to be much more higher, correct? And maybe after that, it may plateau out to maybe, 10, 11, 12% or maybe 8, 9% in the long term. But in the short to medium term, it needs to be significantly higher because these programs are very big programs.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at our engagement with BMW, where we have made some announcements, it has been very high. And actually, different clients are at different stages, and our engagement cycles with them are at different levels. But certainly, the engagement can be pretty significant, and as I mentioned, over the years.
So, do you
the question you wanted to ask was whether at the end of the major EV programs, that pipeline will die off. So actually, it doesn't happen like that, because although they may have an EV program which comes to an end this year, next year there are further improvements required in the EV program. Maybe a different battery chemistry will come up. Maybe different battery management system will come up. Maybe their voltage will change. So all these things means continuous upgrades and changes. If you were to look at the internal combustion engine, which has been around now for about 100 years, we continue to do extensive work in internal combustion engine, because there also there was change from towards electronic controls, there was change towards more efficiency, higher requirements of energy efficiency and all that. So similar things will happen in electric vehicles also. The motor manufacturers will continue to have better and better quality motors. The materials of motors will change. Therefore, the motor ECUs, motor controllers will change. So it is not going to be the end of improvements in one single go. It's going to be a continuous improvement for I don't know how many more years.
Sure. Yeah, of course, it is a constant process. But, so, is it possible for you, do you have any idea in terms of, say, on average basis, typically, this kind of spend is how much % of the, of the total, say, for example, for one car, typically how much, say, with a mid-size car, then how much typically such spend is a percentage?
I didn't quite understand your question, but, very broad figures we gave earlier. This overall spend, McKinsey says will grow by 10 to 12% over the next decade. which I think is a fairly good approximation about the size of the market. I think we can go by that number. The composition of that can change. Like for example, there was heavy spend on L4, L5 for autonomous. Now people are really focusing more on L3, getting it right. So those kind of variations will continue to happen. But I would think that it is useful to look at the aggregate, and that market, is 10-12% growth.
Okay, fine, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Dharmesh Kant from Art Ventures. Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir, for the opportunity. Sir, what I see is like a huge cash pile up of around 22 crores in your balance sheet. And going by the current run rate and the guidance which you have given, I see around 110 crores kind of a cash being added to your profitability post paying off your dividend around 30%. So what kind of, one is like any organic acquisition which you can do, and the other is if that is not done, so what kind of return are you expecting on this cash pile up on an annual basis? Any guidance on this, sir?
So we are working on our cash cycle as well as the improvement that we can do in our income side year-on-year basis. But we believe we'll be able to improve the return in the current year than the last fiscal. We can't give you the exact numbers, but the income side will definitely improve.
Anywhere around, say, 5% post-tax?
No, I can't give you the numbers because the investments, type of investments are sometimes different. So those numbers can't be given. The income will certainly improve.
And if you look at the cash, we give the breakup as to how much is in India and how much is in overseas accounts, because we have subsidiaries, we have delivery centers which are outside India. So there are, of course, cash requirements there. So the whole cash is not which is in India and which can be invested. So I think in our investor updates, we give that breakup as to how much cash is in India and how much is outside India. So that breakup also needs to be considered. But if you look at the income that we are generating, it is increasing every quarter. If you look for the last 4 quarters, the absolute number is going up, and that trend will continue going forward.
And so what I understand is the large part of this cash generation is also on account of receivables deals which has reduced significantly. Am I right on that?
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. That's all from my side.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sumit Pokarna from Kotak Securities. Please go ahead.
Thanks for giving me this opportunity. Just wanted to understand, do we carry any risk on the softwares we write? And if yes, how are we hedging that?
So it is similar as you get into any software development. Of course, in some of these programs, we have a higher responsibility. There are multiple ways in which we do. I think one is going into very detail in terms of putting a responsibility, what will be this, who will own what kind of a thing. Second, we, in very rare cases, we typically have a cap on liabilities in most of our programs. So that is there. And the third is we naturally take, if there is any specific contract where the liability is higher, we take a specific contract-related liability insurance. So these are the 3-4 ways in which we do. Also, we take out the carve-outs in our agreements. Our agreements are very tight, and that is also something which we work very closely.
And one of the missions that Mr. Pandit and Patil spoke about includes zero-defect delivery. So our focus continues to remain delivering the defect-free products to our clients.
Right. The background from which I am coming is that recently Tesla was trying this autonomous car and it hit and some accident happened. So I'm just trying to understand if...
those liabilities we don't take. There is no indirect liability.
Okay.
We don't take any indirect liability.
Okay. And what currently you have mentioned, if my understanding is correct, that your pricing is more on a fixed contract basis, fixed price contract basis. So going forward, is there a possibility that we also try to do a revenue sharing model on the number of cars being sold and the software used on those cars?
So I don't think that is a great model. While we do have wherever we have certain, there are 2-3, if I have to say, platforms which will go into car where we get certain royalty kind of a royalty or per car basis revenue. Royalty is a wrong word maybe, per car revenue. See, the two things. One is when you start developing the software, the car comes into production after 2.5 years. Secondly, you don't know whether that model will be successful or not. And certainly that is not something which is available. And as I said, more OEMs want to really own the software. So from that perspective, this model is very limited for usage. And also, as you know, more number of cars may go down over the period, right? And value out of a car will go up. So I think in multiple ways, this model is very limited in its purpose, for its purpose.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, due to time constraints, that was the last question for today. I would now like to hand the conference over to the management for closing comments.
So thank you. Thank you, everybody. I hope we have been able to answer your questions. But if there are still any more questions, please feel free to write to me, and we will be happy to get back to you. So take care and stay healthy. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On behalf of Dolat Capital, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines.